Free your apps, simplify your operations. This is the story from the day of podcasting that the News Stack did with Dell Technologies, which is coming to you on June 9th, where you'll hear from experts about simplifying multi-cloud operations, shipping great software, and transforming developer teams and operations teams together. But what about that journey? Domain Druids will tell you it can be a bit like a tour through an inferno.
It's not often that Dante's Inferno gets brought up in a podcast, and I'm not gonna.
You just haven't been on enough podcasts with me. It comes up more than you know.
I'll have to save it for another time for us to get into the non-concentric circles of hell. I think starting with limbo, but we can go from there another time.
You're like, okay, I'm done with my code. You're in limbo until it's in prod. So you're already in that inferno spectrum, right? So it's, now when you're dealing with the security reviews or you want to make a change to the database schema, like you might be drilling a little deeper to the core there. So it's a very real visual that I come back to. Unfortunately, on a daily basis.
I think that by that time you're in the fifth circle, which is anger. When you get into the security mode, but
I can see the infographic now that you have where you're mapping everything, all the way down to treason.
Oh.
Through the many circles of the journey will come the time when you have to think through, how do you stack the layers of the stack? As Michael of VMware says, the roles may get confusing with multiple personas, even sometimes when the multiple personas are for the same person.
I think that they're going to work together in a common language, right? And they have a common way of describing these applications and common way of monitoring, a common way of operating these apps. And that's very critical for them to have a way to communicate. And also, depending on the size of the enterprise, these roles may be the same person in some cases. So it's important for them to have a blueprint for how do you manage, how do you monitor, how do you observe, how do you resolve issues, how do you reduce downtime in your applications? And when they have all that common language and a common set of tools, it makes it easier for them to understand each other and be able to pass requirements to each other and make this a successful endeavor.
But through it all, how do you leave the monolith behind? Jonas Simonsen at Heptio in Scandinavia says it's now a bit surprising who is actually leading the way.
Well, yeah, cloud native in general, if you look at how applications are delivered, less and less customers are upholding the standards of a standard monolithic application. They're being pushed by external providers to use container-based technology. Basically, from a development perspective, it's much easier to develop software in terms of software upgrades, governance, lifecycle management when you're dealing with container-based technology. So I would assume, and this is a guess, but I would assume that this will be the new normal. And when you look at how Dell Technologies are delivering that with VxRail on top or in the bottom of the VCF stack, that is something that could appeal to the market because it's a pre-packaged, pre-certified, and pre-supported basically technology that can be delivered in scale. And bringing the container-based or the cloud-native landscape basically to any customer, may it be a small company with 50 employees to a large enterprise with 4,000 or 5,000 employees.
But putting too much faith in the kingmakers can pose more problems than you think if the rest of the kingdom is remaining silent. Patrick Oley of Intel can attest to that. The roles are changing. There's lots of different personas. There's the developers, there's the configurators, there's the people who manage policy. Patrick, where does CSI fit? What is the persona of the person who you see managing CSI?
You are very optimistic about developers understanding what they are doing here. I'd like to challenge that just for a second, because just like business leaders we as developers have problems and need to understand the bigger role that the things that we work on actually have. We are, of course, looking for technical solutions, but of course, we also want for a solution to be used in practice. And that means listening to businesses, how they want to deploy things, listening to application developers who are looking for features in the storage systems and want to do certain things. We need to figure out what that is that's currently missing in CSI. And that might be technical things like we want to snapshot a volume, take a copy of it. We want to resize volumes. These are all demands that come from many different directions, and priorities are also sometimes different. So even the technical side is a lot about a communication and figuring out what everyone is interested in, what's technically feasible and what makes sense to implement.
But make it simple, says Bhaskar Sabla of VMware.
If you think, when organizations start, or, when teams start to think, okay, I am going to run my stack on Kubernetes or my application on Kubernetes, and here is a potential capacity that I might require or scale I might require. And what I find teams doing is they'll look at that and they say, okay, maybe 70% of something of that, extended capacities where we started, or scale that, and that we started that. But the good thing about the way, this is where I feel like people who run bare metal infrastructures versus maybe a virtualized infrastructure is, if you see yourself moving beyond that threshold, it is really simple to add another node, add another stack, and just get that, scale out pretty simply without necessarily, doing anything to your, necessarily getting into maintenance mode. And a lot of this is possible not just because of virtualization, but the way Kubernetes itself operates. Right? Kubernetes has this notion of nodes, and it can auto scale to any node. It can, let you dynamically add a new node to a cluster and things like that. So I think that's what, combined with, the elastic layer that runs beneath it, is the way people or folks go about it.
So join us June 9th for the NewStack's Day of Discussions with Dell Technologies. And remember, free your apps, simplify your operations. Dell Technologies helps organizations and individuals build their digital future and transform how they work, live, and play. The company provides customers with the industry's broadest and most innovative technology and services portfolio for the data era.